Hello, everyone. Welcome to the YIVO Institute for Jewish Research. My name is Alex Weiser. I'm the programs manager here. So YIVO is a special place for research and contemplation on Jewish culture and history of the diaspora. And at the center of YIVO is our library and archive, which has over 23 million documents and artifacts and some 400,000 books. And we make these books and documents available through digitization, through the library here, through research fellowships, through exhibitions, programs, and classes. But what we're doing tonight is, I think, really special because it's where, in programs like this, that the past comes together with the present and builds the future. So Annie Gosfield, as I'm sure many of you know, is a really remarkable composer. And she is herself a part of this Jewish story and of this Jewish culture which YIVO exists to preserve and to celebrate. And in addition to being a part of the story, she is a commenter. She is a thoughtful looker at the story and thinker about it through her music. So we're really particularly excited to have Annie here today writing new music for us and performing this concert of her music. So I just wanted to say that the first thing that we're going to hear actually is an archival recording from YIVO's sound archive of a Yiddish theater song from 1928. This is a song that Annie heard a few years ago and wrote a piano piece inspired by. So we're going to hear the playback of the actual archival recording, and then we'll hear Kathleen Supové play this piano piece. Then we'll hear a cross-section of some of Annie's work, including a new work that we commissioned for this concert. And at the end, Annie and I will have a discussion about Jewish culture and about her music. And I just wanted to say that on a personal note, I'm really particularly excited about this concert as a composer myself. When I came to YIVO about a year ago, it was concerts like this that I was the most excited about as a way of linking the past to the kind of creative work that's happening today in this very vibrant community of New York City. And so I wanted to extend a special thank you to Annie for being a part of this project, and to all of the musicians who've done a tremendous amount of work preparing this program. I also wanted to say a quick thank you to all my colleagues at YIVO who have been very supportive of these kind of ideas. And thank you all so much for joining. I hope you enjoy the program.
landlord of number 6 Girk Street imposed a tax for every East Side baby of 50 cents extra per head. The ferry boats rumble. The battle fights raging. 150 East Side kids raised in a tenement where tenants refuse to pay a baby tax. They stormed the courts with an army of babes hanging from mothers' skirts, hanging from mothers' skirts. Demanding magistrate Leon Sanders, how can we be fruitful and multiply, multiply? How can we replenish the tenement with babes heaven sent, paying half $1 a head? Tell us, what is it you would do? Should I turn my firstborn Isaac into the streets? Stop, Rachel! Strangle Moses. Shoot, Rebecca! Drown Mira. Poison Nathan. From the roof, from the roof. Hug the twin babies, Lena and Abby, until they take their last breath. halls and stairways we organized, withholding our rent and gathering weapons. We organized tubs of water poised on the railings, scuttles in convenient corners filled with vegetable ammunitions. We organized rotten tomatoes, sprouted potatoes, and a dead cat brought in from the street. One of the older boys in the building, who was in his last year at school, thought of President Theodore Roosevelt and wrote and mailed the following letter to him.
Honored Sir, 30 families with 150 children live at number 6 Garrick Street. Our landlord is trying to drive us out because there are so many children in each family. We have been very happy with new babies coming every once in a while, and now it is all desolation. Please send those Rough Riders and cowboys to help us. Respectfully, Abe Zabriskie, 13 years old.
Six floors of opera with all the babes. The joy of destruction was so universal among the children. It seemed only fair to charge by their number. The landlord had 4, should he not love the others? But business was business. Business was business, the landlord said. Business was business. So we organized just a stone's throw from the East River. And a lot of stones were thrown on Garrick Street. Where Edison built his dynamos, every mother, son, and daughter called themselves a real New Yorker. Some were born in Bucharest or the Isle of Ischia. Galicianers, Deutschen, Rumänische, Ungarische, otherwise known as hunkies, and Litvaks, all children of the Isle of Ellis. And a dead cat brought in from the street.
So Annie, thank you again for being with us tonight.
Oh, thank you. I'm sad it's over. It's been so much fun coming to YIVO.
Well, you can keep coming.
Okay.
So since these last two pieces were inspired by your grandparents, maybe that's a good place to start our conversation. Can you tell me about when your family first came to this country and what those sort of circumstances of that were?
Okay. I have a cousin in the audience. She might be able to help me. I think my grandmother came here in 1904. You don't know. She was 14. She worked in sweatshops. You know, this is funny. When Ari was reading this letter, it sounds so funny, like he's in his last year of school, Abe Zabriskie, age 13, and you mentioned, well, because at 14 you went to work. So, sorry, we're a happy people. I believe my grandmother moved here in 1904. My other grandparents moved here around the same time. They were all from different places in Eastern Europe and met in America.
And they were all Yiddish speakers, is that right?
Yes.
Could you speak just a bit about the Yiddish language for your grandparents, for your parents, and then for you?
Sure. My grandparents, you know, I think Yiddish was probably their first language. I mean, my grandmother, who really didn't get much of an education, spoke Yiddish, Polish, Russian, a little Hebrew, and English. You know, it's kind of remarkable. But again, Yiddish would have been their first language. They did not encourage my parents to speak Yiddish because partly it was their secret language. So of course, my parents heard it around the house, and my father describes hearing his parents argue in Yiddish and just sitting there like the little angel who understood every word. So my parents spoke some Yiddish and in turn used it a little bit as a secret language with us, but you know, each generation spoke less. And they sent me to Workman's Circle when I was a kid, so you know, I probably learned a few nouns, but I went back to Workman's Circle as an adult and learned a little bit.
So other than the Yiddish language, what were the Jewish culture and traditions in your life as a child or growing up?
You know, it's hard to pin down exactly because we were Jewish and I could not say how much was Jewish and how much wasn't. I think there's a certain sense of humor. I think there's a sense of history with the family, which, you know, could be happy and could be quite dark. We were not raised religious. Our cousins were more religious, but my mother always managed to get out of any religious activity. She did a lot of babysitting then. So, you know, that's not a very concise answer, but I think the culture was always there. The culture was in a certain approach to conversation, to humor. I think my music sounds quite Jewish without that being intentional.
You've told me about a Yom Kippur tradition that you have that...
Yeah. My grandfather he was famous in the family for walking down 2nd Avenue with a bagel on Yom Kippur. So I've always done this myself, but you think about, you know, what did this mean 100 years ago? Well, the fact that he was eating a bagel meant he was Jewish. It didn't mean he went to the nearest deli and he was hungry. So, you know, we have all these Yiddish theaters on 2nd Avenue, so I just love to do this every year and think about him and think about his life and how hard he worked. And it doesn't mean so much to not be fasting on Yom Kippur. And eating a bagel is no dead giveaway that I'm Jewish, but it's, you know, it's like my own ritual.
It's a wonderful ritual. So speaking of 2nd Avenue, this is a big source of inspiration for your music. Maybe we could talk about the way that sort of some of these ideas and experiences have influenced your music, perhaps starting with the Dybbuk of 2nd Avenue.
That was a piece that was commissioned. The pianist who originally commissioned it said,
do you want to write a piece inspired by a Frank Gehry building? And I said, no. And she said, do you want to write a piece inspired by architecture? And I said, no. But I will write a piece inspired by the Yiddish theater because I can look out the window and see an old Yiddish theater. And, you know, it's nice if you're lacking inspiration to be able to step up from your keyboard about 7 steps and look out the window and go, oh, yeah, that's what I'm writing about. But, you know, what's just a traditional theater that shows a lot of Disney schlock now started as a Yiddish theater. And it has kind of an interesting history. I mean, I wrote about it in the program notes. Hal Wilner said to me, oh, were you here when they had that great William Burroughs program? You know, it used to be called, I think, Intermedia Arts. There was a drag cabaret in the basement during World War II. And, you know, of course, the Yiddish theater was the primary inspiration. So I'm hunting around for Yiddish songs when I'm writing this piece, and I found this record that you played from YIVO.
What place does the Yiddish theater hold in your sort of imagination?
You know, I think more about my grandparents going there. Just because it would have been so dear to them when they first moved to New York, and it was so important to the community. And this record that you played had such relentless repeats that also was an influence on the piano piece.
So moving down Second Avenue to the Junkman piece, both of the last pieces that you played were originally premiered in the festival of John Zorn's Festival of Radical Jewish Culture. Is that right?
This is true.
Could you talk a bit about that festival and sort of how that got you going in New York?
Sure. When I moved to New York almost exactly 25 years ago, and I actually moved to the Upper West Side. I had a sublet there, and I was very close friends with Irving and Stephanie Stone, and Irving Stone is the person for whom the club The Stone is named, and Stone, as we called him, went to my parents' wedding. So when I moved to New York, I called up the Stones, and I said, well, I'm here in New York, I'd like to play at the Knitting Factory, I'm not sure what to do, and it was like talking to the Godfather. They're like, call Zorn. So I called him, and he said, oh, great, I'm doing this Festival of Radical New Jewish Culture. Why don't you present something? So by that time, I had moved to 2nd Avenue and 12th Street, and it was really moving for me to think about, you know, living across the street from this theater where my grandfather went. He would also go to Cafe Royale across the street, walking the same cobblestones that my grandmother walked. And I'm going somewhere with this. I just blanked out, Alex.
So about the Festival of Radical Jewish Culture,
Okay.
What was radical about it? What was Jewish about it? How was your experience with it?
Well, for me, it was kind of moving back. I didn't know if it would be easy or hard to move back to New York, but I felt so at home culturally and artistically, and this was really a great time for me in New York City. And I got to create a lot of work that was very important to me and got performed by other people as well.
So how about this piece that you wrote, inspired by work here at YIVO? Could you talk a bit about that experience?
Sure. Well, this was a piece inspired by The Pianist. And, oh, you mean the new piece?
The new piece, that's right.
The new piece was really fun because I was thinking I wanted to learn more about the Lower East Side. And I read through a lot, and Irving Howe pointed me to this really eloquent passage about Little Augie, who was a gangster. And I actually wrote text about this like beautiful quote about Little Augie where his gravestone said that he died at 26 years old because that was when he went into the gangs, and his father wrote that because at that point his son was dead to him. But he actually died at 33. I also wrote text for another song that was about two thieves stealing coats and suits in a very innovative way on Upper 2nd Avenue. But then Trump got elected. And I just thought, I'm not going to glorify a gangster. And there was so much negative information about immigrants, like on every level. And it's such an important part of our lives that I thought this was something I really wanted to emphasize.
Oh, wonderful. So, you mentioned you'll feel sorry not to be coming to YIVO as much. What next?
Well, this is kind of a nice transition. I've been writing an opera, which has a lot of pieces for voice and one or two instruments. It's commissioned from the Los Angeles Philharmonic, but it's going to be performed in Walt Disney Concert Hall there, but also at satellite sites at air raid sirens, which will be performed by these individual singers and instrumentalists. So I don't know, I feel very lucky that pieces overlap in a way they do, and it was great for me to write for Ari and Rachel. Kathleen Supové had never played this piece before. I've worked with Roger Kleier forever, at least in your lifespan, forever. And this was, Brian Chase had never played these songs, so this was really wonderful to play it with him. So, it's funny, it made me, I'm usually pretty relaxed about these things. It made me a little nervous that every piece was something new for each person.
Well, we had a great time. Annie, thank you so much.
Thank you.
And you're welcome at YIVO anytime.
Okay. And thank you to YIVO for making the facilities available, not only for research, but this beautiful concert hall. And, being able to work with these great musicians and rehearse and have access to the concert hall is, it's an important thing that we really appreciate. And to have your support artistically and your support financially, it has made quite a difference. And I thank you, and I hope you will do more concerts like this.
Me too. Thanks so
Okay.
much, Annie.